Every time you see somebody drop a plate on a car before a race, that's somebody's fault. Every fuel cell regulation, every minimum weight rule, every body spec they check at the tech inspection, all of it exists because at some point, somebody figured out a way around it. And I find that truly fascinating. You see, because the people who wrote these rules, they didn't sit in a boardroom somewhere dreaming up the rule book. They wrote them in reaction. Someone showed up at a race with something nobody's ever seen, went incredibly fast, and the rule book had to catch up. Let me take you to 1966. NASCAR is on a full-blown civil war between the sport and the major automakers. Ford has pulled its factory teams out of racing entirely over an engine dispute. No funding, no factory support, and almost no Fords on the grid. Into this gap enters Junior Johnson, former bootlegger, one of the most respected car builders in the sport, and someone who had no problem bending the rules to their absolute limit. He broke ranks with the other Ford teams and showed up at Atlanta Motor Speedway with a Ford Galaxy he built himself. The roof had been shocked between 3 and 5 inches, depending on who you ask. The windshield was laid back at least 20 degrees. The nose nearly scraped the ground, and the rear quarter panels had been swept up to the point the car actually curved like a banana. They had to physically lift the driver and slide him through the window to get him in the car. The roof was so low that he couldn't climb in normally. Let's think about it for a second. The car was so heavily modified that the driver couldn't get in the car like all the other drivers did. NASCAR saw this, they measured everything, they knew it was illegal, but they'll let it race anyway. Why? Because Ford needed to come back to the sport. NASCAR needed Ford. And apparently, Junior Johnson was promised by Bill Friends himself, NASCAR's founder, that the car would be allowed to race no matter what. The yellow banana never raced again after that day. Ford came back, the compromise was over, and NASCAR firmly closed the door on anything like this from ever happening again. But the car is at NASCAR's Hall of Fame, because that's what happens when you do something so outrageous, so out there, so far beyond what anyone thought was possible that history can't ignore it. This next one is less about aerodynamics and more about straight up outsmarting everyone else. 1977, Darrell Waltrip is the driver, and the crew chief, a guy named Gary Nelson, has a bit of a problem. The car is too light. NASCAR has minimum weight rules. Your car has to weigh a certain amount at the very end of the race. The idea is everyone is working with a similar amount of mass, so no one gets an unfair advantage by stripping everything down and going light. Gary Nelson's solution was very simple, yet very smart. He filled the hollow frame rails of the car with buckshot. Thousands of little lead pallets packed into the frame, completely invisible during tech inspection. The car weighed exactly what it needed to weigh at the very start of the race, and then mid-race the driver would pull a wire, would open up a flap, and they would let all of that buckshot out onto the tarmac. They were littering the racetrack with lead pallets and losing weight on purpose live during the race. By the time they crossed the finish line, the car was lighter, faster, and still passed tech inspection because all of the buckshot was gone. The funny thing is, NASCAR never really caught them. The story really came out decades later after Nielsen himself talked about it publicly. And here is where it gets genuinely poetic. After spending years building cars to purposely fool NASCAR techs, NASCAR hired him. Gary Nielsen became NASCAR's director of research and development. So the guy that spent his career building contraptions to fool NASCAR's tech inspectors became the guy running the inspection program. But hey, if you want to catch cheaters, who better than the guy that wrote the playbook on cheating? Smokey Yunick. Smokey, if you know the name, you already know the story, and you know why this is #1 on this list. And if you don't, you're gonna understand why people still talk about this guy 60 years later. See, Smokey was a mechanic, an engineer, an inventor, and an absolute menace to anyone trying to run a fair race. He wrote a column on popular science. He held dozens of patents, and he spent years trying to figure out how to make race cars go faster than the rules say they were allowed. 1967, Daytona 500, and Chevrolet has pulled its factory support from NASCAR. No budget, no backing. Smokey shows up in an unsponsored Chevy Chevelle with a driver named Curtis Turner. They put their car on pole in front of heavily funded Ford and Chrysler teams. People were suspicious immediately. A car with no money, no manufacturer backing, no sponsors, faster than everyone? The car was torn apart after qualifying, and what they found was the car looked exactly like a production Chevelle. Same shape, same proportions, everything was visually correct, except it wasn't. See, the car was a tiny bit smaller, 7/8 scale to be exact. The entire car, lower, shorter, and narrower. And it looked right because the proportions were right, but it was indeed physically smaller than it's supposed to be. See, a smaller car pushes less air. Less resistance means more speed, and because they kept the proportions identical, it passed visual inspection. Nobody really noticed it until they measured it. This is not bolt-on parts. This is not a hidden tank or a trick spring. This dude built an entirely different car and made it look like the real one. The car never really raced. It was disqualified after qualifying. But the story doesn't really end here. Because of what Smokey did, NASCAR introduced templates. Metal templates that get placed on every single car before every single race. And they've been dropping these templates on the cars for decades after Smokey. Every car you've seen at a tech inspection getting a template dropped on top of it, that's Smokey's fault. He created the rule by breaking it. 3 stories, 3 guys that pushed so far past the line that the line had to be moved up to keep up with them. And I think that's actually worth sitting with, because the easy read on all of this is that they were cheaters. And yeah, technically they were. But the harder read is that every technical regulation in motorsport has a story like this behind it. Someone went further than anybody thought you could go, and then the sport had to respond. In my opinion, the rules aren't the ceiling of what's possible. They're just a record of what somebody already did.